Everyone says how horrible it will be to renovate or build your house. We're here to say it doesn't have to be that way. Join 3 seasoned architects as they interview homeowners who recently completed a large project and ask them one simple question. What do you know now that you wish you knew before you started? Welcome to Home, the Second Story podcast.
Hi, and welcome to Home, the Second Story. We are 3 residential architects sharing real conversations with homeowners who have taken on custom home or renovation projects. I'm Sherry Scott from Springhouse Architects in Cincinnati, Ohio.
And I'm Marilyn Modinger of Runcible Studios, located in Boston, Massachusetts, and Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
And I'm Taylor Davis of TPD Architecture and Design in Birmingham, Alabama. And today we are joined by Antonia Botero. Welcome to the show, Antonia. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you, ladies, for having me.
We're excited to learn more about your project. I know you and Marilyn have known each other for a long time, but I'm going to take a couple of minutes and dive in with some quick orientation questions for our listeners. We're going to be talking about your home project. So where was the project located?
The project is in Park City, Utah.
Was the project a new build, an addition, or a renovation?
It was a new build.
Oh, fun. New build in Park City. So when did you start and when did you move in?
So we started digging in May of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And we moved in August of 2023.
Okay, that's pretty good. What's the size and how would you sort of characterize the style?
The size, I would say, is big. And the style,
It's fair.
I'd like to think it's like a contemporary mountain home. I would say with some nods to mid-century and a little bit of Japanese thinking and some like Alston sprinkled in.
I'm really excited to hear about this one. This is going to be great. So there are lots of different ways that you can work with an architect. Some folks just buy plans and some folks working with an architect for full services from design through construction. How did you work with an architect on your project?
This one, I kind of did a little bit of brain surgery on myself. I was the architect of record on the project.
Oh, this one's going to be really juicy. Now I'm learning all sorts of things. Well, thanks for answering. Marilyn, I'll turn it over.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, Antonia, you having done the project yourself, I mean, I think you should also maybe tell our listeners, for those who don't know you, what you do professionally and why it's particularly interesting that you chose to take on this project yourself.
Awesome. I love that question. So we are actually a real estate development company. I've been practicing in real estate for a little over 10 years now. I am a registered architect in several states, including Utah. That is what I went to school for. And it's interesting that we took on the house build. My husband and I, we GC'd the project together. And it's interesting that we did it because we both work in commercial real estate development and we both have a really strong commercial construction background. So there are a lot of aspects of the project that we took on as a commercial project. Partly because of the moment in time. This was sort of right after COVID and where it was like the market was super weird. And so we were flexing our relationships and availability of materials that we could find because of our professional connections. And so a lot of the things that we did on the house were sort of approached in the same way we would have approached a commercial project. So that, it's also what allowed us to build a house a little bit faster than we would have otherwise.
Well, and I think also there's a difference between working on someone else's project and working on your own project. So when I happen to know a little bit about the project, just, so full disclosure, I've been to Antonia's house. It's fabulous. But I want to talk about the design aspect in the sense that you're in a community where there's like they have rules about what you can and can't do in that, like an HOA type or design sort of regulations. So can you talk a little bit about, because some of our clients face that, like when you were looking at lots and you were like, oh, we could get this lot, it fits a lot of our it checks a lot of our boxes, but there's also these HOA rules and design regulations. How did that feel? How did that impact your decision to buy that lot? And how did that impact your design process?
Oh, for sure. So I mean, one of the first things was in the area where we are, just the way that the community is located, we have this really beautiful view of the Wasatch Back.
Mm-hmm.
So the view for out of the house is just unreal. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, orient your house this way or that way." Here, it was like there is no orienting your house in any other direction aside from the view. Like, I'm sorry, it is western facing. We have a ton of western facing glass. I understand what that means. We have great shades that work very well. But a lot of the design of the house, the siding, the room layout, the way that we plan certain spaces are framed by the view.
Yeah.
From the street, the house is very solid. From especially the main street that you come down. We're on a corner lot, so we have two streets, and then the main street. It's very quiet. There's barely any windows on that side. There's enough to let you know, okay, this is the entry to the house, but the entry is actually not visible from the top street. So in that sense, it kind of has some of those Japanese principles of architecture. And then it opens up, and the idea is that when you're inside the house, even if you don't have the opportunity to walk outside, you are experiencing the day. And you are experiencing the view and the nature and the sky, which is unreal out here. So I think that was a big part. It was finding a site where we could orient the house truly to the view, and the entire house looks at the view. So that was sort of the first thing. And the second is, I mean, the guidelines are, I feel, I'm going to speak out of both sides of my mouth on this one, because on one side, like, you kind of want guidelines when you have a very large community, and this community is getting pretty big. You want to make sure that you are able to keep some sort of continuity and make it feel like it's, especially with landscape and in an area where the landscape itself is so fragile in some ways, where if you were to build like a white house and you were to put it on the side of the mountain, it would stick out. I mean, it wouldn't look, you would see it from the highway sort of thing.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So it's good that we have them, but at the same time, some of the guidelines go a little bit further than necessary, I think. And they create a certain aesthetic that you see in the neighborhood that you're like, I think the main one that I designed around was, there's this regulation, and it's related to fire risk. And so it's this thing where you got to have the first 4 feet of your facade need to be made out of a non-combustible material if they are touching native vegetation or any sort of combustible horizontal surface. So anything that touches landscape needs to essentially be stone or metal. And what ends up happening is you get these houses that are fairly well designed, but then it looks like someone took the house and like dipped it in stone.
Yeah.
And it's
Right.
a very,
Right.
it's completely arbitrary. It's 4 feet. And then those 4 feet like don't align with anything. And you're just like,
Yeah.
what is happening here? And then we got, the bottom of the stone, which you need to detail properly. But then here they stop it short because we get so much snow that you can't have the bottom completely. I mean, on a good winter, and this is not one of them, but in a good winter, the bottom of your stone, if you go all the way down, will be completely behind the snow. And it creates these really weird aesthetics. And so I went and I made rules. Any surface that touched the landscape was going to be non-combustible for the entire facade. So I actually don't have a base on my house at all. And when the design review committee saw my house, they were like, "Well, your house doesn't comply." And I was like, "What do you mean? It does not comply."
Because it doesn't look like all the others.
That's right. Yeah. So it was a whole process of, we did things like that where we wanted it to have a cohesive architectural language that made sense and that kind of played on the principles that were really important to us. And so marrying that to the guidelines was a great exercise. I like guidelines. There's the thing, the boards make the hockey game sort of thing, right? If you remove the boards, all of a sudden you don't have a hockey game. Well, it's maybe not as fun. But for me, a lot of people see the guidelines and it's like 95 pages and a lot of them are pretty asinine and kind of ridiculous. And a lot of people get hung up on that, say, oh, the HOA has these guidelines, like, and I'm just like, okay, these are the rules. Let's just go play. So I think it was having that attitude and making those rules and saying, how do we get around these guidelines to still express ourselves in the way that we want to. So that was sort of the exercise for us in mediating the guidelines with the site, really, because that's what it ended up being about.
You didn't really like ask for exceptions or to change the rules. You just designed within them and came up with different solutions.
Well, and that's the advantage to working with a good architect, which you were working with a good architect, aka you. So you were, but that's a key point, right? Like to not get overwhelmed if you are looking at a lot in a community with a ton of HOA stuff and a ton of design guidelines. If you're working with the right architect, then and the right design team, then you're going to be able to do cool stuff and everything doesn't have to look just like your neighbor. So I think that's an important
Exactly. I think that you're spot on there for sure.
So about the design process. So an architect designing their own house is always a big deal. So how did you go about that? You know, what were the guiding principles? Like I know like entertaining is very important to you, for example. Like what are some of those things that drove the design? So you want the view. We know we're not going to be dipped in stone, but what else?
Okay, wait, and I'm going to interrupt real quick because I am so intimidated to design my own house. So I'm like from scratch. So like the fact that you did this is like level 10 for me.
Yes,
it's a huge big deal. So my ears are like this, just so you know.
Amazing. I think there were a couple of things. I think the honesty in the materials and the structure were a big one. We have these really big glue lamps that are visible in my living room. And a lot of people think that they're fake. And I'm like, no, they're actually holding up my roof. So we had a lot of honesty and structure on the exterior. We have these really big overhangs and we do have exposed steel that holds up our overhangs. For everything, again, the honesty of materials. So instead of, we can't paint siding and that's one of the guidelines. So it has to be stained natural siding. So that's what we have. We used a thermally modified ponderosa pine and we used a natural stain and it looks, I really like it. It looks very like off place.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
We worked with a great, folks out of Montana. I think they just moved to Texas, but they're semi-local. And we spent a ton of time figuring out. We actually worked with Sierra Pacific on the windows and we used their timber curtain wall product, which is the first time they'd used it on a residential application was at my house. So we provided a ton of feedback. We did a lot of work with their engineering team. We did a lot of work with their field team. And it was an awesome process. I thought it was super cool. We got to see how a lot of these guys were changing materials changing details as we went, responding to how someone may use their products in a house. So I think it was everything that we did. I mean, even the hose bibs that we did, or like the exterior faucets for people who might not recognize the term. We found these really cool ones that are flat. They don't look like the big thing that like, you're like, wait.
That sticks out on the side. Yeah.
So everything, there was kind of like a curiosity in all the things. There was a sort of a little extra. We took a little bit more risk. Like, for example, with Sierra Pacific, I don't know that I would have done that with a client's project or a client's house. It took us a full year of between shop drawings and going back and forth and then doing details on site. So there was some schedule, risk. There was some financial risk. And I think that made it very cool. So we kind of had the principles of like curiosity throughout. We had the rules that we made, that there were design rules for the house. The honesty in the materials and the structure. And then sort of the house is kind of divided into public and private. It's like a big L. When you look at it from the road, from the garage, all the way to where the L turns into the private side of the house, it's 200 feet. So it's this really long, single story, very cool, low pitch roof, structure. And it has a wall, big wall, that stone wall that kind of separates one side of the house from the other. So it has like a very strong architectural party, and it divides the public and private. There are kind of levels of public in the house. And, we have a really big entry. And so you can have the idea of like people can come all the way to the entry and never go into the house. People can come into the garage and never go into the house. You can come into the public area of the house and have a lovely dinner or a party, and you could still never really see the doors to the bedrooms. The idea carries on both floors. It's sort of like a walk down, walk up basement. So those were sort of some of the very general, and again, the view, right? The whole house is just oriented west because it's a crime. It would be a crime not to do that.
Right. Especially if you had enough room on your lot, to do that.
Yeah.
That was the only exception we got, by the way. So they give you the building envelope and they sort of it has an intention behind it. Like when you see that building envelope, it's like these people want you to put the house in a very specific spot. I didn't want to put it there because it was kind of throwing me on top of my neighbor. And I wanted a very long house. And I would say for the most part in this neighborhood, most people ask for some amending of their building envelope just because these guidelines were set when this thing was entitled, which was 15, 20 years ago. So obviously things have changed and neighbors have built their houses, and so perhaps these don't make any sense anymore. So they're fairly flexible on those, but that was like a big one for us. We wanted to site the house and just so, and that was kind of our biggest exception, I would say, which is in the context of asking, we didn't ask for much. So
right. So this project is unique in many ways, and one of them is that not only are you the architect, but you were also the GC. So you're like the dynamic duo.
Level 20.
Yes, exactly. So one thing that a lot of our clients, and then we've heard in interviews and whatnot on the podcast, is that when do you bring the contractor in? And our response is usually during schematic. Like it should be early in the process. Since you were the contractor, you had the contractor from day one. So what kinds of decisions, how did that impact your design, the construction process, like to have that mindset from day one?
Yeah, this is super interesting. It was very interesting for us because, so again, my husband also works in development. He's on the construction side, works for a really large company, and he builds really big projects. So for us, it was sort of the total opposite in terms of process.
Yeah.
Typically, we're used to very robust construction documents. We go through full pre-construction processes with big GCs where we're having conversations with trades at the end of DD. And our processes take 24 months before we're even in the ground. So for us, this was completely different because we knew we were going to build it. We knew we were going to resolve certain things in the field. So we took a what I would say is more of the traditional design build approach, which I always tell people that I very much dislike. Like from many perspectives, number one, you don't have details to bid. And so you don't have documents to bid. And so therefore you end up in a situation where you're kind of married to the contractor before you even have the chance to go out and get different opinions on how you should build stuff, ideas on different kinds of vendors that you could use. And I think that if you're building a project for someone else, especially if you're not within this industry, I would 100% do like a design, bid, build. Especially, I think for single family homes, and I think where I'm beginning to see some exceptions where some people do a really good job is in design build, but that is so tough because you get to that moment at the end of design where you're like, okay, we're going to go build it now. And you don't necessarily have the drawings that you need to bid it out to someone else. Right. And so a lot of the homework gets front loaded because you need to vet those people out. You don't get the chance to do that after your drawings are completed. They're not even completed. That's the problem with design build. So when we did the house and I was drawing it myself, I got a little bit of help from a colleague that had worked with me in development. She's also an architect, and she had some some extra time, so she helped me out. But most of the drawings was just me. So I was very efficient with what I needed to show, which was kind of old school, right?
It
like,
is old school. Yeah.
Plan sets.
Yeah.
Where like every single
4 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like every single discipline is on the same sheet. And you're like, you could see like
Pack 'em
MEP,
in.
you could see like everything is just on one sheet. And you're like, it's all, which is great because in residential, it's like all coordinated. It's all right there. The funny thing is that I the whole house on Revit. And I coordinated the whole house on Revit. The structural was on Revit. Like, and he was a commercial structural engineer that I knew from commercial work. So it was a very funny mix of, and the reason we did it, my biggest thing is like, people should not do it the way I did it. That is not, it worked really well for us. It was efficient in terms of time, which was kind of my biggest constraint, because typically builders out here take 24 to 30 months to build a house the size of mine. And I told Mike, my husband, I was like, look, I'm like, if we're 24 months in and we have not finished this house, I am packing up my stuff and I'm moving back to New York. So we're going to have to figure this out. Like, I can't take this torture for 24 months. So for me, like, number one thing was we need to finish this house we had a really aggressive schedule. We had a 13-month schedule. Which was nuts. And everyone's like, you're not going to finish. I shared a little bit of my house, and there was this guy on Twitter who was very much rooting against me. He's like, you're not going to be done. Like, you're not going to move into this house this year. Like, it was great. Because every week I would do like a weekly update. And I'm like, looks like we're going to be
I remember. Well, I want to pull something out there. So you said something. You said, don't do it like me, but the way I did it was perfect for the way I needed to do it.
Correct.
Like, let's underline that 100 times, because what we're trying to do is help people find the way that they need to do it for themselves and for their situation, which will not work for everybody else. There is not one size fits all. There's principles to what we talk about and how to do a project, but it's not one size fits all. And I think that's really, it's like when people are like, well, how much did you build your house for? And you're like, unless you built this house in this location at this time with this contractor with this design, it's a worthless piece of information.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for us, I mean, even things like what we were doing with Sierra Pacific, right? Like it was like R&D live.
Yes.
It was like, okay, like it was just such a different process in so many ways because of what we do for work. So, and the expertise that we have, like, and it's not just me, it was also my husband, and he understands construction. He understands development. He started out, working at Bulvis Lendlease in New York. Like, he was a project he was a project manager. Like, he started and he's seen it all. So, and he's built some really big buildings. So it wasn't just me. And the interesting thing is, I think most people in some ways have very specific circumstances. And when you're doing something your own home, it's so personal.
Yes.
That you're gonna have some situations that are different than everyone else's. And so in doing the things that make sense for you, time is obviously one of them. Sometimes people are like about to have a baby, or they have a parent who is sick and is going to move in with them. And so there are all these other life considerations that go into what makes this house, what makes this project, what are the goals of the project. And you have to get very personal with it, because it's not going to be the same for everyone.
Do you think that you could use your same program for somebody else that wanted a house, for you to like build them a house? They fall in love with your house. They're like, hey, I want to do the same process you did. Is it like not achievable because you put so much more time in than a regular professional was? Or do you think that could be viable?
We're doing it. So,
oh, you are.
Spoiler alert! It's happening.
I
Awesome.
know and that one was very serendipitous. Like I mentioned, I shared the build of my house online.
Yeah.
A couple reached out and they were like, "Hey, look, we want to buy a house in Park City." And I was like, "Oh, this is awesome. Let me introduce you to my friend who's a broker." that was it.
Go have fun. Yeah.
Go have fun. I'm like, I can't help you with that, but I know someone who can. Sure enough, they ended up buying a lot. I run into my friend and he's like, hey, so these guys don't know this because I can't tell them. But just so you know, they bought the lot 2 houses down from you.
Oh.
Yeah. And so then we start, then the guy messaged me and he's like, hey, your friend Dave was really great. Like he knew he had bought in the same neighborhood as I was in. And then we start talking and I was like, oh, you're on the street. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm on the street too. I actually think that we're neighbors. And so anyway, we kept talking from there. He went and got a few proposals from architects in the market. Originally, I was like, well, I can help you level them. I can help you ask the right questions. But, this isn't really what I do for work. And then some time went by and I know they were trying to figure out exactly, they were traveling a lot and they had, a lot of life things that are specific to all of us. And so after a little while, they were like, well, would you guys consider doing something similar? And I was like, well, Mike has a job, so I could probably get together with another friend locally who is a great residential contractor and see, and maybe I could put together a good team of commercial architects to draw this house. And so we're doing it again. We just got into design review, so we'll see how the HOA likes me the second way around.
And are you still excited about it being a client's project instead of yours? Has it been harder to hold those rules that you want to implement?
Well, number one, I'll start with these guys have been dream clients. Like, they are awesome people. So
nice, good. That helps a lot.
I'm just very lucky. And by the way,
yeah.
I don't think I would have said yes to the project if they weren't awesome humans. So, because I'm at that stage of my life where I'm just like, I don't need the nonsense.
You don't have to, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been really great from that perspective. And what that's meant is when we present coherent ideas, whether it's architecturally or from more of like a program and needs standpoint, they understand. And they ask really good questions. Like, it's not just, they're not just like, oh yeah, sure, you said that this was the right way to do it. It's like, oh, why are you doing like this? And why are you thinking this way? And really thoughtful. So in that sense, it's been really cool. I think in some ways building my house was harder, but in some other ways I am a lot more cautious. Like, there's a lot of stuff that I let fly. Yeah. Because I'm like, well, I could figure this out on my, like, I could figure it out later or like whatever. With these, I can't do that. Right? Like, you have that responsibility where you're just like, no, we need to coordinate this properly right now. When I did my house and I was submitting drawings, I'm like, well, coordinate it in the field. I'm like, it'll be fine. Right. Because I'm going to be out there anyway. Like, I was going to be,
Yeah.
So
we'll just meet on Tuesday. It'll be fine.
Exactly. Yeah. So now there's a little bit less of that and a little bit more of that care. But it's been a really interesting process. I haven't done residential architecture. I mean, I did my house obviously, but I haven't done it for other people in a very long time.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
I was a little bit nervous. I'm like, can I still do this? Is this like riding a bike or
I know I'm doing a project of my own right now, and I have found that I can help my clients make decisions way better than I can make my own decisions. I get a little bit paralyzed and it's so much harder.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's partially what a good architect is doing, is helping people make decisions. It's not just doing the drawings, it's the actual helping people make decisions, which I think people really discount as far, don't understand just how many decisions they're going to have to make.
Right.
And, especially when you're working in a bigger home, there's just that many more bathrooms. There's that many more details to figure out. There's that many more sort of windows you have to go through in the window package. And I think that factors in as well.
Totally. And that was, by the way, that was the one thing that, and I mentioned that I worked with a colleague and she had worked with me. The main thing she helped me with was interiors, because I was like, the choices are infinite. And I am going to I'm not going to be, I just knew like things like the big coordination stuff, that stuff always came very easy to me because I spent so many years in commercial architecture and coordinating and detailing and making sure the floor and the threshold and like all the stuff that to me makes it feel really nice, but that most people don't even notice. But when it came to like selecting tile for bathrooms, I was like, I didn't even, I was like, I need you to give me the direction and then I could go to Dow Tile and pick something that's in the, in that direction. But me going to Dow Tile and being like, I have a vision. No, that was not happening.
I think it's harder in interiors and selections like that to have more of a party or you had talked about the honesty in structure and honesty in materials. I think it's harder to have those types of rules with the selections.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And especially when you're like, well, let's have a little bit of fun in the half bath. Let's do something special in the primary. Let's consider something in the guest room. Like there's different needs for each of those spaces. Mm-hmm. And maybe there's different price points as well, where you're like, okay, on the primary, we're going to kind of really do it up. But in the guest rooms, we're going to be a little bit more modest or whatever the case may be. You're changing the rules of the game for every single one of those. And so that changes your selections process. I mean, I remember it with my own house, picking things out, and it was really helpful when there were parameters that I put on myself. So whether it was a cost parameter or whether it was, I have like 6 boxes of this tile left over from another project, I'm going to use this in this bathroom and I have to find another tile that coordinates with it. Sweet. Like that parameter was helpful.
And digging into our own architect psyches, it's almost like we know too much. Like we know that there are lots of possibilities out there, and so it's very hard to make a decision. If we're working with other people, we can put those parameters out there and make the possibilities limited.
Let's talk about construction a little bit. So I remember reading your weekly updates, most of which were about pushing 18 inches of snow off of whatever you were doing.
Out of the living room.
Out of the living room, yes.
Awesome.
So can you talk a little bit about how construction, I mean, you were GCing it, so obviously that factored in. But talk a little bit about construction.
Again, we approached the house as a commercial project, so we built it as a concrete podium, where most people do concrete retaining walls and then floor joists for the main floor. We actually built a full concrete floor, and there were several reasons we did that. The first was at the moment when we went to buy our lumber package, lumber had gone astronomical.
Yeah, those were the days.
22.
Yeah. To the point where I remember calling the structural engineer and I was like, Jeff, I'm like, we're going to have to do this floor in concrete. And he's like, never in my life have I ever seen this. I was like, this is insane. So that was sort of the first thing. It was materials were going kind of crazy. So we moved to Utah in 2019. It was before COVID. And then we ended up waiting because we weren't sure what was happening with construction costs. And it was, which is weird because I always tell people don't wait because it'll be more expensive next go around. But in this occasion, the pricing was so crazy that waiting was actually helped. That by the time we finished buying the lumber package and the trusses and all the LVLs, so we have a 6-inch roof line. So our roofs are only 6 inches thick. There's a ton of steel, and we have a minimum of 4-foot overhangs everywhere because that's the HOA guideline. And then in many places, we have way more than that. We had a hybrid roof, which was unusual for here. We built a concrete podium, which was unusual for here. We put a timber curtain wall in the house, which was unusual for here. We used metal framing downstairs because we had concrete. So then that meant that we used BX for all the wiring. And all of a sudden you have all these residential contractors who are like totally lost.
Yeah.
And it was cool because our electrician, they have a commercial division and so they felt a little bit more comfortable. But when the sprinkler guy came and homes here are required to be sprinklered, which was news to me. That was a whole other thing.
Yeah, that's fun.
When the sprinkler guy came out and he's like, what do you mean you want me to coordinate your sprinklers with your lights? And I'm like, what do you mean why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of that, the way we always do it. We had some fantastic tradespeople. The plumber who did that, we had one plumber do our entire house, which is, he's a union plumber who's kind of moonlighting and starting his own thing. And I told him at some point, so remember, the house is 200 feet in this direction, and then the L is like 100 feet. And we have bathrooms throughout. We don't have a single penetration on the roof. Not a single one. We don't have a single vent going through the roof. They all basically converge and they go up and through this middle wall that divides kind of the house. And when I told him this, I'm thinking, oh my God, Jimmy's going to think I'm nuts. Like, he's going to be like, you've lost your mind. And I'm like, Jimmy, I want to do this. I want to sort of, all the vents are going out here. And he was so excited. He was like, I have never done that before, but that is a rad idea. He's like, let's do it.
And that's when you knew you had the right person, right?
That's the right guy.
And everything he does is with like so much care. I mean, he came recently because we just put in our final kitchen, our actual kitchen sink. We just put it in maybe like 2 months ago.
Amazing.
I know, Marilyn, we finally have an island.
I know. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty funny story of like marital strife and like the one point of contention
we love
of
those.
the entire project. So anyway, Jimmy is fantastic. He has his own company. He's crushing it. He's just a really good guy. But and he came the other day to put in our sink, and it's just awesome to see him now have his own company, and it's kind of awesome. It's just all around really great. So we did things a little bit differently than people are used to, and we kind of pushed on those things, and I insisted, and I had crazy ideas, and they were like, all right, I guess you're the owner if you want to do this crazy thing. Like, I guess, maybe if I was just the architect, I would have gotten a lot of grief, but thankfully, I was like, well, sorry.
I'm paying the bills too.
And I'm paying too. Exactly.
Yeah, that's helpful.
He who holds the checkbook.
Exactly. So we had picked, when we designed the kitchen, we have this very large kitchen island, and it took me forever to find the perfect slab for that kitchen island. And it's this beautiful white Lincoln Calicut marble that has this vein in the middle, like just one big vein in the middle. And I mean, I spent, you know how hard it is to find a stone as it is. And then find a stone where it's one piece of stone that fits the 144 inches.
Yeah.
It's 144 inches and most, so it was a jumbo slab and it was nuts. So I find it, it's beautiful, we get it. For various reasons, our cabinetry came in, it was the wrong color. So we had to get C of O. So our tile guy was like, well, I'll just give you like a quartz top, temporary top. You guys can use it, get your CO. And then when you're ready, we'll come in and we'll swap it out and whatever. And when you replace your cabinets. So I built my kitchen 3 times because that was a whole other, we did things way too differently. And now I was like messing around with the kitchen detail. So at this point, Mike was like, I want the stone to be marble. And I was like, babe, marble is like linen pants, right?
Yeah. White linen pants.
Great way to describe it. Yes.
Correct. I'm like, they're going to be wrinkled. You're going to see all the etching and the wine stains and I'm like, and the grease stains, because we also have it in our backsplash. So it was installed in the backsplash and on the backside of the kitchen. These guys cut the stone because it was easier for them to install. When I saw it, I almost started crying.
Oh, no.
And I asked the guy, I'm like, why'd you guys cut the stone? And he looks at me and he's like, well, because the stone wasn't large enough. I was like, I'm like, look at the size of the island. I'm like, are you serious right now?
They cut the one jumbo stone that you found that you fell in love with, and they like cut it in half to install it?
God.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct. Yeah. So I was like, do not touch any more stone, not cut anything else. So we put them on hold for that. Plus we had the cabinet issues. So we had the temporary quartz top. We start we start living in the house, right? We move in and we still have the quartz top. And Mike is like, this quartz top is great because you could just put hot stuff on it. You can do whatever.
Right.
Yeah. He's like, I don't care about it. And sure enough, we start, and he really is the one who primarily cooks. And so there is oil stains all over this marble, and I'm fine with it. Like, I'm actually okay with it. It's part of our kitchen.
Patina, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And so he's now having second thoughts about this marble island because he's like, oh my gosh, like this thing's going to stain and whatever. It takes us like 2 years. And it was a back and forth. He's like, oh, we should find a different stone. I'm like, man, if you can find a jumbo slab that you like, I'm like, God bless. I'm like, I will put whatever, unless, as long as it's not dark. And so he started going down that road. And after like 6 months, he's like, I can't find anything. I'm like, I know. I'm like, it took me so
Sometimes
long.
you have to let them figure it out for themselves.
That's right.
Totally.
That's right.
So then I was telling a client of mine the story, and he's like, hey, there's this tough skin product that we put on. Have you ladies done this? It is
Like
magical.
a sealer?
What? It's like a sealer?
On marble?
No. Yes. This is like, the plastic wrapped furniture.
Oh, wait. No, I have seen this. There was an Instagram post on this somewhere, somehow I saw recently.
So I'm hearing about this thing and I'm super skeptical, and I'm just like, I'm like furniture wrapped in plastic. I'm like, I don't know. And my client, he's very picky. He's a commercial client. So we've done hotel, with him. We're working on a different project now with him, and he's great, but he likes things just so. He's very particular. So when he tells me, he's like, no, you don't understand. He's like, this stuff is awesome. And I'm like, I don't know, man. So anyway, I go look at one of these applications and like, you can't tell.
Yeah.
It looks like a honed top.
Yeah.
It scratches easily, but it doesn't stain. So if you spill like red wine or whatever. So anyway, we find these guys. We finally find a solution. We're like, fine, let's do it. And eventually we did it, but it took 2 years.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
So,
and it was like
Antonia-
Mike being like, I hate the splatters. I was like, I don't.
For our listeners, how would you have done that differently from the beginning? Did you learn anything from that?
The part about the kitchen or the stone or
Any of it? You said you redid your kitchen 3 times and you lived
Yeah.
with a different top for a while.
2 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
We took risks that I wouldn't have taken with a client.
Mm-hmm.
That was what it came down to. We did things that we really wanted to do, and it was our house, and we could risk it because we understood the ramifications of it, that we understood the costs. So I think that was part of it, where if I was doing this or when I do this for commercial clients, or even now that we have clients who are now our neighbors, which is another whole dimension of you don't want to screw that up.
Exactly.
There are certain risks that I'm not going to take.
Yeah.
There are certain options I'm simply not going to put in front of them. And I think that that's just the main difference in terms of, I think for me, it was acceptable because I understood.
You're experimenting on yourself, not on a client. Yeah.
100%. It's acceptable because I understand. But I would never tell a client, hey, we're going to test out some millwork details, and a millworker who's never done this before, well, he's a really good guy. Like, no.
Yeah.
So I think I don't think I would have done it differently, but I would never do this to a client.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's just not the right approach. And I would say for anyone who's in the process of building their own home, I think understanding those things of like, what does it mean to have a temporary fixture?
Yeah.
When are you going to come replace it? What are the gating things to then being able to replace it? I think those are really important things for homeowners to understand. I think that we lived with it and we were fine with it because it wasn't affecting some of the major. We still had parties at the house, right? Like some people were like, and most people didn't notice, but some people were like, wait, is this
Doesn't look right.
temporary? Like, it doesn't look like it belongs.
Yeah.
But I think that's where it can get, it's important for people to ask those questions. Hey, how many times have you worked with this millwork? Or how many times have they done this kind of detailing? And I knew that it wasn't, but I could take that risk with my house.
And if people are building a house and they're thinking, oh, I want to do something different, tell your team you want to do something different and ask them what the risks are. Like, what's the risk if this doesn't go right? And then, the architect or the contractor or the sub can tell them, well, you'll probably end up living with a random piece of stone for a while till we can really figure it out. And then decide if that's worth your risk or not. But the typical person that's building a custom home, they're not going to know what what those outcomes are going to be and what those risks are. So ask what that is. That's great.
And I think even like the whole marble conversation with my husband, right? This man knows a lot about construction.
Yeah.
He has built some beautiful, super high-end apartments, condos in New York, and some really fancy hotels. And I was like, you realize this marble's gonna get stained. And he did not, he was like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, no, you're going to hate it because I know you. And he was like, let's see it. And after the first like month of cooking, like he was just like, what the hell? And I'm like,
yeah. And you're like, I told you.
Yeah.
And he's a professional, right?
Yeah,
so imagine homeowners.
Right.
Yeah.
As we talk about the marble issue, I think it's time for our final question, which is, of all the things in your house that are fabulous, including the newly resolved marble situation, what is something that you walk in and every day you're like, yes, I love this?
Heated floor in the bathroom.
Oh, good answer.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Absolutely.
That's such a good answer.
Absolutely. And the book match marble in the bathroom.
Yeah.
It was worth the aggravation. As you can imagine, working with these folks that had cut my jumbo sled.
Yeah. Well, also, heated bathroom floors are not that expensive. I'm always talking people into it. I'm like, guys, it's like not that expensive. Just do it. 100%. You'll love it. So I'm glad to hear that from you. Well,
and very easy to install, by the way.
Very easy to install under a tile floor. Don't do it under a wood floor. Right.
Unless you have a wood floor
unless
that is
you
engineered.
Unless you have warm board and or other product. Yes. On that note, on that technical piece of advice, Antonia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, ladies. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Great information.
Yeah, highly, highly valuable to our listeners. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, another fun conversation today.
A totally different perspective.
And nice to have a new build. We've been having, a lot of renovation type projects. So it's nice to have a new build in the Mountain West too. I don't know if we've had anyone in the Mountain West.
New location.
Have we?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
New location.
I mean, obviously, I'm going to underline the part that I already underlined, but I'm underlining it again. Antonia's saying that she would not recommend her procedure, like her process, to anyone else because it fit her so perfectly. It's like saying, I've had a suit custom made for me. You can also have a suit custom made for you, but my custom suit is not going to fit your body. But they're both suits, right? Like it's still the same concept, but the actual fit is not going to be the same. And I think that's really important. People are looking for an exact, quote unquote, blueprint of a process to do, but that doesn't actually play out very well.
And we can give them framework. I mean, that's what we do, is give everybody a framework to operate in. And that's what all architects will offer, a framework to go through that generally follows big decisions to little decisions. One of the things that I think is interesting is that that conversation of how you work with a contractor that she highlighted, where she would recommend people to do design, bid, build that way as opposed to doing design, build was really interesting. Because I think that is so dependent on your team and how long they have worked together, and if they have worked together, because that whole process could be very different depending on where you are and who you have assembled to get you to your build.
And where you are in particular. So, the culture of the building industry in that location, that may be what they do. Like around here, builders won't even talk to us to do a bid. Right now, it all swings back. It's always on a pendulum, but right now that's what we're seeing. I loved so much of that conversation. Her design principles of honesty and structure and honesty and material just like pulled at my architect heartstrings that we don't get to do.
When was the last time
on
you
every
heard
project
partie on a podcast?
I
know. God, it was awesome.
That's like an architecture school term right there.
Yeah. But then what makes her so interesting is she can go from talking about that kind of esoteric things And then talking to us about redoing her kitchen 3 times and arguing with her husband about the marble. It's all part of one project, and everyone, these projects are tough, and it's a roller coaster.
Yep. You know, one of the anecdotes that I really loved was the story about the plumber getting super excited. And I want to underline that because I feel like there's a sense of if you want to do something cool or different or out of the ordinary, that you're going to have to fight for it. And the subs are going to be mad at you and the GC won't want to do it. And everyone's going to be like, oh, she wants this fancy whatever, blah, blah, blah. No, if you're like good subs, including good plumbers, good everybody, good electricians, good carpenters, really enjoy the challenge. And they got into this work because they care about doing doing something interesting. I just want to like shout out our trade partners because I feel like there's just so much negative energy or negative commentary around, well, the plumber, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, no, there's great, amazing plumbers who are like, sweet, I get to figure out this challenge. And that's really cool.
Yeah.
And engineers and electricians and steel people. I mean, there's so many trades that approach their trade like a craft, and take so much care and thought. And it's really inspiring to be in the field with them and watch those folks work. And it sounds like she had a really good experience being able to kind of partner with someone to do something different who was willing and able to go on that journey with her.
That's right.
Which was really cool.
And the flip side being, the marble guys cutting her 12-foot marble.
My Lord.
Like, I mean, oh Lordy. So that to me is like, you can never have too much oversight. Never. It doesn't matter how many times you confirm it's the guy on site with the saw who is making the final decision. And I used to say when I was in the field and I was project managing on construction sites, the minute I heard a guy with a hole saw or I heard a sawzall getting started is the minute I was like, something bad is going to happen. I must find the guy with the sawzall and find out what he's about to sawzall because we are not, like, that is a bad sign. So both of those are true, right? Like really good sub partners and trade partners. And then also, even if you find the right person who's like the right company, it's the guy who they send out on site.
Yes,
100%.
You can never have too much oversight. You can never have too many checks and balances. And, luckily they got it resolved. But boy, oh boy, that was a lot of extra work.
There's some things that caulk just won't fix.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what we used to say down on the job site, Taylor? We used to say, little caulk and paint, fix what a carpenter ain't.
Yeah. No.
Anyway.
I think Antonia's very good at building teams.
Yes.
And she knows what she's good at and what she needs help with, which I think, anyone building a custom home, you've really got to kind of take that assessment of yourself. Even if you're not building it yourself, you do need to know what you're good at, what you need help making decisions on, because nobody knows it all and nobody is great at every piece of it. And building a team like that and handing off things that you might need some help with is important.
Absolutely. And also knowing, she was saying that she and her husband both have more experience in commercial construction. And so they brought a lot of those commercial details into their project, which was an advantage in many ways, but also meant that they could only work with certain trade partners or they had a lot more explaining to do. So where that balance is of like where you're pushing that too far and you're forcing the square peg in a round hole type thing, or where you're pushing for something that's going to get you something that's worth that extra effort. I think that's also what she's good at doing. And that takes decades of experience to kind of understand when you should push for something because it's worth it and when you should back off because you're pushing in a direction that's actually not productive.
Yep. Well, just like I was just thinking about the concrete, and
we did a raised terrace with a raised slab, which every guy who pours concrete and does parking garages is not going to blink an eye at. But a residential contractor doesn't work on that very often. And it was a really hard sell. And I can only imagine, and that was just a terrace. I can't imagine the concrete podium that she was trying to build and having, you know, the residential folks out there being like, well, I'm not quite clear this is going to fly. That's a whole different beast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think also the point of like, even when you do have a lot of expertise like she does and her husband does, and even when you do have a lot of expertise, you still need help, right? Like the decision-making process, you know, we were sort of all sharing a little bit around that, but this idea that you do need help still, whether it's someone, you know, who you're bouncing ideas off of or who's forcing you to make a decision or whatever the case may be. So it's still, even the professionals need help.
Yes, for sure.
And we ask people all the time, it is a team effort. I mean, her talking to Sierra Pacific and doing R&D on site to figure out how to use that timber curtain wall. I mean, that's an exercise that good professionals understand, that there will be back and forth with tradespeople, there will be with vendors, there will be with engineers, with other colleagues. We don't know everything and we need help.
She said it took a year for them to figure that out.
Amazing.
It's amazing. I mean, and the other thing too is like, I really identify with this idea of not experimenting on your clients. So I will be much more conservative when it comes to my recommendations or my comments or my, you know, whatever about a client's project than I was on my own house. I mean, my own house, there was a lot of like, just like Antonia was saying, you know, you know, I'll do that myself later, or that's okay for now, or whatever. And so when people say, well, I want your house, I'm like, okay, well, do you understand that the flooring, no client would ever accept the level of quirkiness that is in my flooring.
Right. Right.
That they want it perfect, right? And my floors are 300-year-old, you know, heart pine, whatever, that have been in the house forever and are all crooked and broken and weird, but I like that. So I think, but I'm willing to go with that for myself, but I would advise against it for a client because of so many reasons. So I think that's also an important thing too, is to like understand when you're hiring an architect that, you know, you do have to be clear about what you are expecting in terms of, or what you're okay to live with.
Yeah.
And what your expectations are.
Yeah. Like the conversation we had with her about risk, right? Assessing the risk and asking like, you knew the risk of those floors. You knew what they were going to turn out like, and you accepted it and wanted it, right? But other people, if you just say, oh, we could do these we could keep the original floors and they'd be beautiful and great patina, but they wouldn't really understand the risk.
And they come in later.
Upkeep, or the maintenance or whatever.
Decorator comes in and freaks out.
Yes. Yes.
No. And meanwhile, I'm the decorator of my own house. And so I'm like,
freak out. It's great.
It's fine.
Thanks for joining us on Home, the Second Story. If you'd like to come on the show and share your story, email us at admin@htssspodcast.com. We'd love to have you as a guest. For more inspiring homeowner stories and tips, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Home, the Second Story podcast. Feel free to share this episode with a friend. Contact information for all three of our architects are in our show notes. And don't miss future episodes. Follow or subscribe to our show for free in Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening right now.